In this video, we're going to go over 5 different winning lists since the balanced data slate has come out. Hope you enjoy. So the first of the lists we're going to go over today is the Devoted of Ynnead, the Asuryani Inari detachment. This has been cooking up a storm. There's been a lot of people talking about how strong this is. I think there's a lot of different play in the different Elder factions and detachments you can take within Elder. Like Inari, I think, is probably the strongest, but also the hardest to actually play. Then you have Aspect Host, which is just kind of generically very strong. But there's also been good placings with the Spirit Conclave and a couple of the others as well. So I don't think there's one specific great list, but I think Inari has the highest ceiling from all the tricks and crazy stuff you can do. So we're going to go into a list that won a tournament last weekend. And it's going to start off with 2 Autarchs with fusion guns and starglaves. These guys are really good. Like a fusion gun is just really, really good to have. Gives you that extra bit of anti-tank or anti-heavy infantry killing. And then the starglaive giving you, I think it's 4 attacks at 6/3 3 damage. It's a really good profile to be able to hit through those kind of tougher, toughness 5, toughness 6, 3 wound models, which are pretty prevalent at the moment. I think like Custodes, Possessed, Chosen, all those kind of things. There's a lot, Terminators, all those kind of things. Like this guy absolutely chews through like 2 or 3. Really, really good there. Also the CP reduction that they give, really nice. Then they have the Incarn as the Warlord. The Incarn is definitely toned down from how she was in the Index. Isn't nearly as powerful, but has still a lot of tricks, and with the new tricks that Inari have in this detachment is still very, very worthwhile. And just being able to teleport around, even though it's only when you lose your own units now, it's still a very powerful thing to do, and it's very difficult for your opponent to constantly be playing around. They kind of just have to either put more guns into a unit, and then if you teleport, then they still have stuff to shoot, it makes things really interesting. So I really like the Incarn here, mainly for the tax that it puts on your opponent, and how they have to play the game very differently. Then we have a Wave Serpent with Shuriken Cannon and Bright Lance, very standard here. Wave Serpents in Devoted of Ynnead is very, very strong, using the Lethal Intent move that you get to do a normal move, and then being able to battle focus off that as well to get the extra movement. You can really reposition your Wave Serpent at the end of your opponent's shooting phase, which can be really, really strong, especially if you have Banshees or Dark Reapers, or potentially both inside. So you can use the Dark Reapers to whittle down a unit, finish them off with Banshees. You can do a lot of fun plays, and like the amount of repositioning you can do because of Lethal Intent really makes the Wave Serpent a really, really good choice here. Then we have 2 units of Dark Reapers, both of 5, Tempest launchers on the Exarchs, and then just Reaper launchers on the rest. We have 3 units of Fire Dragons. These guys are great. They kind of, even though they went up in points in the data slate, I still think they're mandatory. They're just so good at what they do, but they're also kind of a one and done. Each one of them is cheaper than a vehicle, and it pretty much always will kill a vehicle. So you're always kind of trading up, but they're so easy to kill in response that you only ever usually get 1 activation out of them before they die. So it does make them a little bit trickier. Being a bit more expensive does hurt a little, but they're still so good at what they do that I think they're worthwhile to take. And the Exarchs have the Fire Pikes for the extra range and Melter 4, so it makes them really, really consistent there. Next we have 2 units of Howling Banshees with the Exarchs with Executioners. These units are just absolutely mental for 90 points. The amount of damage that they put out is it's very surprising. Like, they easily kill their points of Space Marines or Marine equivalent kind of data sheets. But with the Exarch having the damage 3 as well, again, going into those Terminators, those Custodes, those Chaos Space Marine lists, even the new Demons have a bunch of 3 wound models. Just having those extra 3 damage attacks to push through the extra damage can be really, really strong. Next we have a unit of Striking Scorpions, good to get some infiltrate. They're a good early game skirmisher, can play the game fairly well. Really, really nice include here. 2 Warlock Skyrunners. These guys are great little action monkeys. There's 3 Wraith Lords that are a bit down below in the list, so they also unlock the Wraith Lords, giving them the +1 to hit. and the extra leadership, which can be really nice, but also just having those action monkeys, having those bits to like go out and move like a certain angle if you need to as well. They can do all sorts of really fun things. And for 45 points, it's really, really cheap for what you get. Now, next we have 2 units of Warp Spiders. The X-Psych has Death Weaver and Spinneret Rifle. Both of them are exactly the same. Obviously, all the aspect units have their aspect shrine tokens as well, because they're free. Why would you not take them? Warp Spiders are absolutely pushed. At 95 points, they are crazy. Yes, they probably don't do as much damage as they used to, but they still do so much damage for the points, and the blink is just so good. The fact that the blink you can lose multiple models now, I think is a really nice way of balancing them, because it is a bit more risky now to blink them, because if you roll 2 or 3 ones, which is, yes, unlikely, but still very possible to happen, the output of your unit is so drastically changed that it kind of means you play them a little bit more defensively a lot of the time. But they are also one of the best problem solver units that Warhammer has, not even Eldari themselves. And then to finish off the list, we have 3 Wraith Lords with double Bright Lance, Flamers, Ghost Glaive. These guys are kind of like almost feel like the backbone of this list in a little bit. They're the way of like kind of keeping the primary game alive. Obviously, if you get shot off a point, you can sticky it if you're on it. So there's a bunch of things you can do in this detachment, but just having some beefier guys that can just actually sit and be like, hey, I'm a 2-up save with that's toughness 10 with 10 wounds. It's not trivial to get rid of. Like, yes, in this game with Oath with +1 to wound and all the other buffs that different armies can get, they still do die 100%. But it does make them that they are still, have to put a lot into them, and then that's what the Eldar army wants. That's what Inari wants. Is they want your opponent to commit as much as possible, so then you can capitalize and kill everything that comes out. Because you probably need to point more than 140 points worth to kill a Wraith Lord, just because of that durability. Because it'll be in cover, it'll have a couple, a 2-up save with cover, 10 wounds. It's pretty tough to deal with. You have to get pretty lucky to kill that with one other thing that's roughly the same points. And with 3 of them, you can put 2 on your expansion objective, and then 1 kind of is like, go off and do their own thing. I think that's kind of the idea with having the 2 Sky Runners. Yes, you only have to be within 12 inches to get the buff, and you don't necessarily have to have the +1 to hit, though it does make them a lot more consistent. But if you had 1 with 2 of them, so like 1 Warlock with 2 of them, and then the other one kind of going off with 1 Warlock on its own, means you kind of have options for secondaries on both sides of the battlefield, and you can still control the game quite well with that. The kind of interesting things that caught my eye with this list and why I wanted to bring it up was a lot of them have been running 1 big unit of Dark Reapers, and this one's just running a 5-man, no 2 5-mans, instead of the 10 and a 5, which has been very popular recently. And I kind of like it. It means, again, if you put 5 and 5 Banshees in a Wave Serpent, and probably one of the Autarchs with the Dark Reapers as well, it means you can shoot and get back in with the Dark Reapers, and you can that also have a countercharge unit that if you need to after a lethal intent move or a battle focus move, you can get out with the Howling Banshees and also deal with the threat as well. So you kind of get a double activation out of it, and makes the transport a bunch more aggressively utilizable, as well as a defensive piece, instead of just as kind of like a home for 10 Dark Reapers. So I really like that kind of style. I'm assuming that's what he's doing with them. Then you also have the Incarn being able to teleport around. Incarn's damage is not super consistent, by the way, but it's enough that you have to respect it, which is kind of like a really interesting breakpoint. I feel like there's a lot of units nowadays that are at this where it's like, I'm not actually afraid of you, but I have to respect it in case you roll a little bit on the better side, and you can kind of kill anything in the game. So it's kind of one of those interesting things where it's like, you should only kill like 3 Space Marines, but you could kill 5, or you could kill a Land Raider. So I have to kind of respect both. It's quite an interesting kind of dynamic there, which I quite like. It's a bit more variance, which is never great for competitive play, but it is like a really interesting unit there, and like the ability she has, absolutely amazing. So yeah, really, really cool list. Really think Eldar are in a really cool and interesting place. Are they a bit too strong? I don't know. I've played them a couple of times. They do feel very strong, and it's definitely a mental load to play against them. But at the same time, there isn't much in this list, right? There's an Incarn, 2 Autarchs which would be attached to units, a Wave Serpent, 2 Dark Reapers, 3 Fire Dragons, 3 other aspect units, and then just some, as it were, with how you have to balance your tempo. You can kill a lot and you have so much damage that has to be respected, but at the same time you do die incredibly fast to pretty weak guns, so you have to kind of balance that quite often. So that's the first list that we're going to talk about today. So Inari, very interesting, very strong. Definitely think about it when you're building lists for the meta. If you're trying to build something to like beat the meta at the moment, you need to be able to probably beat a strong Eldari list, whether it's Devoted of Ynnead or one of the other very strong Eldar detachments. You want to have a game plan for Eldar. The next is one that I can't believe didn't get a nerf in the balanced data state. Obviously, Space Marines got a little bit of a nerf that you can't have like the Blockless Angels and stuff like that anymore. But Ultramarines still get Good Oath, and with Guilliman, which pretty much all the Ultramarines lists have, double Good Oath, which is just so backbreaking. But this is kind of the bread and butter list that you've been seeing recently if you've been playing against it, and we're going to just kind of break it down now. So the first thing is a Captain and Gravis armor with Boltstorm Gauntlet, Power Fist, Relic Chainsword, and because you have 10 points left over, Artificer armor. Now this guy, because he halves damage, is really a chore to get to actually kill. And with Artificer armor means he has the 2-up save, the 5-up Feel No Pain. He is an absolute chore to deal with. He can reactive move, he can AOC, he's a captain, so he gets one free strat every round. So if you come up close to him, he can just reactive move back. If you try and shoot him from range, he can just AOC it. Like, he's just an absolute chore to deal with. Him combined with the Combi Lieutenant is a really awesome little combo of 2 pieces that are really, really difficult to deal with and usually require more assets than they're worth, which means you're trading up with in those trades, which is just really, really powerful with a list that really doesn't actually have that much units. It has very good quality things, but not really that much. So that's the Captain and Gravis armor. Then we have the Lieutenant with Combi Weapon. Getting rerolls on an objective is great, but also just a really cool piece to be able to reactive move when you end with a 9, 3-up save, 5-up Feel No Pain, all really good things. And just kind of a cool little tool piece, good action monkey, all that kind of stuff. Then we have the 2 kind of joined at the hip characters right now. This is Marneus Calgar and Reboot Guilliman. Really don't know how to pronounce his name. These 2 are just ridiculously good combined. I really think both of their CP abilities, or well, the Supreme Commander ability from Guilliman and Calgar's enhancement and CP regen ability should both be if this model is your Warlord. I think that solves the combo of both of them being like getting 25 plus CP a game is just absolutely insane, especially when you combine it with the Gladius Task Force detachment, which this is. It has the best arrangement of stratagems. None of the singular stratagems are the strongest, but they're all just very, very versatile and very good. So having the CP to just constantly be using all these versatile stratagems means you can always do the correct things in a lot of situations. And I think it's just it's a touch too much. It's a touch too much. So we have Calgar, we have Guilliman, amazing 2 characters. Marneus with his advance and charge, advance and shoot, really, really good. He hits like an absolute truck. More damage 3, just like I was saying in the Eldari list. You want damage 3 in your army right now because it's just there's so many 3-win models at the moment. It's absolutely ridiculous. And especially with Twin Linked as well, it makes him very consistent into those with his 6 attacks. And the honor guard that come with him are also just really great. Then we have Guilliman, who will probably be in the free strat for the entire game. Just make sure you're farming as many CP, well, not even farming CP, just regenning, not spending command points, I guess, as much as possible. Then his other abilities are also very good, but they're a bit more situational. But they're all still he's just incredibly good. His shooting is okay. His melee is very good. He's very good to keep alive until turns 3 and 4, and then push him out and kind of just capitalize on, okay, now he still gets to regen obviously only on a 3-up, but your opponent has to respect the fact that he could come back to life and kind of play around that as well. And it's just really difficult to beat him up at that kind of point in the game when you're already depleted on resources. You can really kind of overwhelm your opponents with old G-Man. Now there's no battle line in this list, no dedicated transports, but we do have the kind of ubiquitous triple ballistas, even though they went up 10 points. Super consistent, kind of don't need, Oath of Moment. They just kind of, they get the rerolls unless they're shooting something below half strength, which is very rare that you actually have to do that. And even if you do, you're still a good shooting platform. I actually really like Predator Annihilators and Ultramarines. Annihilators? Yeah, Annihilators. The ones with the multiple laser cannons. The laser cannon on the top as well. Because they're super consistent with Oath at killing vehicles. One of those Annihilators does a lot more damage. Yes, it has rerolls, and yes, it's the same amount of shots, but they're all laser cannons instead of 2 beam missile launchers. You get, and reroll damage is absolutely insane, but just to get that consistent damage output up higher. So that's something to definitely look at. They're pretty much the same points now. Yes, the ballistas have a 2-up save, which can be really nice, but the Annihilators also have 2-inch extra move. So there's like really interesting talking points there. So I think ballistas, yes, just absolutely amazing. Smaller footprint, really, really nice. But also consider the other options you might have there, because there are some very, very strong ones. Company Heroes to be led by Marnie's Calgar. Really, really good combo. -1 to wound on Calgar is just really, really strong. And Company Heroes is just really, really good. What you get for the points, 105 points, you get 16 wounds of toughness 4, but -1 to wound. You get a sustained hits 2 heavy bolter. You get some good melee weapons. You get a good mastercrafted power weapon in there. Like, it's pretty good. Like, it's really bang for buck, very, very strong, and utilizes Calgar really well. The other option here that can be interesting is like flame aggressors, especially for like the Eldari matchups and stuff like that. Being able to kill a unit of like aspect warriors or something like that, and then charge another one can be really nice. Whereas the damage from the company heroes is not really strong enough to ever guarantee kill a unit. Whereas 3 twin link flamers plus Calgar shooting is a bit more consistent. It does obviously because it's random number of shots can be a bit hairy, but it's just a bit more consistent into the toughness 3 kind of models that Eldari have. Next we have the thing that's really great into Eldari, which is a Gladiator Reaper. This thing has every single gun. This unit is absolutely insane, especially in a singles environment, because it just solves so many problems. And if you're against something really infantry heavy, it's just an absolute godsend. But even if you're into tougher infantry or vehicles, it still has just a bunch of shots, especially if you're giving it reroll hits. The top gun has devastating wounds with reroll wounds, so even if you're fishing for 6s, you can do like 4 to 5 like mortals with this, which can be like just pushes it over the end. That could be the same damage that a ballistas does, and you're doing that just with your anti-infantry vehicle. It's really, really quite good. So really good versatile pick here. There is definitely cause for like, do you want 2 Reapers? But they are kind of big, and there are situations where they just aren't as good as other things. So I think 1 here is a really good sweet spot. Infiltrators to block out those annoying 6-inch and 9-inch deep strikes. Lock down your backfield or lock down part of the board that you need them to. Less important now with the bridgehead nerfs and kind of the lack of a lot of 6-inch deep strikes being in the meta. But still very strong. There's still some armies that as soon as they see infiltrators, they're like, okay, now I'm going to have to change my game plan. And for 100 points, you need something to hold your backfield anyway. There's probably no better unit in Space Marines to hold that. There's obviously intercessors, which is interesting because they're a little bit cheaper. But on this list, I think you don't need the sticky as much. You kind of need the bit more versatility that infiltrators give you. Next, we have an Invader ATV. I don't understand why we aren't seeing more of these at the moment. You can get either an Onslaught Gatling with 8 shots with Dev Wounds, or you get the Multi-Melter, which is what he's gone for here. They move pretty quick. They're like toughness 6 with 8 wounds or something crazy. Like, they're tougher than they should be. For 60 points, like, they're an absolute godsend, I think. Like, there's a fairly small base, pretty easy to hide. Great action monkey, great little move blocker. It's also quite wide as a model, like quite long. So you can move block with it between like two sets of ruins, so nothing can go through, like vehicles can't go through. You can do some really fun things with it, and it's just surprisingly fast and good for its points. Like the multi-motor, you can probably never expect it to do any damage. It's nice when it does, but it probably won't ever do anything. But it's also like a nice little threat piece. Like, oh, remember, there's a multi-motor. He's like, oh yeah, okay, so sweet. I'll move back an extra inch, so I'm not going to be within melter range, yada yada. So like stuff like that is kind of nice just to be able to threaten a little bit with as well. Next, we have the Scout unit. Just an amazing unit in Space Marines, being able to uppy downy themselves. Awesome ability. Having some great weapons here. They've gone for the slightly combat and then with the sniper and missile launcher, so a bit more heavy weapons. I actually quite like ignoring the sniper rifle, going for 4 melee and then a heavy bolter. And their whole goal then is just to kill another chaff unit a bit more consistently. Whereas this is a bit more all-rounder, but they kind of don't do any one thing very well. Whereas I think if you build them the kind of anti-infantry build, they can kind of push through into specific units. So like they can actually kill like 4 or 5 idiots, 4 or 5 other scouts. They're more likely to kill than this kind of combination. So different things to kind of weigh up, and definitely depends on what you feel is like necessary for your list. And obviously here, the extra missile launcher has been a bit more pivotal for them, or it could just already be what they're built with. Then to finish off the list, 2 Vindicators, being great all edition, just 2-up save, good amount of shots, strength 14, d6 damage. What more could you really ask for from a tank? Like, they are expensive, but they do a really good job, and it's just you have 5 2-up save tanks that can just walk around. None of them are easy to kill. They're all tough as nails with access to maybe AOC or these other things. Really, really powerful list here. Doesn't have again, similar to the Eldari list, not a whole huge amount of actual units, but everything in it is very valuable and very strong themselves and does their job very well. It's a very fine-tuned list here. The things you want to kind of think about in this list to battle against it, if you were playing against it, is try and pull it apart a little bit. If you try and just overwhelm it, it has a lot of damage to kind of push out. So you kind of want to take over one side of the battlefield and then try and play a game from there. You kind of don't want to like all in the entire army. You want to win small skirmishes and then overwhelm in turns 3 and 4. You're never going to win like an all-out turn 1 like battle against them, because they just have all the rerolls. They have so much damage with the character suite and just the durable vehicles. You're not going to get through them all when they have cover, access to AOC on one, and they just have all the strats as well. Really, really cool list. Another thing to note with this list is no jump hack intercessors, which is quite an interesting call. That was one thing when I looked through the list the first time, is what it just didn't have, which is JPI. So really cool that like a list winning an event with no jump hack intercessors. Everyone's saying that they're the best thing, some of the best things Marines have access to, and then a list like, nah, I've got these other tools and I'm playing a different kind of style. That's what I'm going to go with, and it did really well. So it's kind of like the Space Marine Gladius and like the Ultramarines Gladius. I do think there's really interesting builds since my data slate video tier list that I did last week. A couple of people reached out to me and talked about Dark Angels Gladius and even Black Templars Gladius and a couple of other things. And it's really opened my eyes to how those kind of lists can play. So I think there's definitely a Dark Angels Gladius build. Even a Black Templars one with Grimaldus and Sword Brethren can be really strong as well. It just kind of hits incredibly hard. So there's definitely different ways you can play that. I still think this is the strongest of all the options, just because you get so much CP and the character suite is still very good. But I can see the options for that as well. If you have a Dark Angels army, swap out Calgar and Gilliman for Azrael, and then you get like Deathwing Terminators. So you kind of play a different kind of bruiser list, and then this one, which is a bit more vehicle heavy, you play a bit more on the heavier infantry side. Like the 4 wound like Deathwing Knights with the -1 damage is actually really poised really well in the meta right now. So definitely some interesting things to think about there. Next we have another Imperium army. We have Lions of the Emperor, the new I was going to say Grotmus detachment. No, the new detachment that came out with the data slate. This detachment is really, really good. They're I did a breakdown of the detachment that will hopefully be up here somewhere at some point. Otherwise, it'll be in the description below. This detachment is really, really cool. The things that it can do are really, really fun. Really, really kind of like, this is probably the most all-rounder. This and Talons, I think, are the two best like all-rounder detachments. Shield Host is a bit more on the damaging side, and Solar is a bit more on the durability side. And then you have Talons and Lions of the Emperors that are kind of like the bit more all-rounder, have a good suite of stratagems. This one's Lions is a bit more on damage, and Talons is a bit more on utility, but both are really, really good. So let's go through the list. We have 3 Blade Champions, no enhancements, 2 Shield Captains in Alaris Terminator armor, one that has Presidius, which is the Lone Op and Stealth, and then the other one has Superior Creation, which is the on a 2-up come back to life the first time you die. So these guys, actually, there is no Alaris in this list. It is just these 2 guys running solo. And I think the idea is one of them probably deep strikes down, the other one starts on the board, and they are just an absolute chore to deal with in this detachment. Being able to change all damage characteristics to 1 for a phase, and then be able to pay a CB to be able to do it again, makes them just such a chore to deal with. And then if you shoot them with more than 1 unit, they're still captains, so they get a free strat each round. Like, obviously between all of your captains, you get 1 free strat each round. But it means you can, if you roll a 2-up, you can hide them back behind a wall. So like if you put a bunch of guns out to see him from different units, they shoot the first one, and then you just move behind a wall. So then he doesn't even have to pop his once per game. There's all sorts of really crazy things you can do to keep these guys alive, and they're an absolute bugger. I played a game against this, and it's very funny, but very difficult to play around correctly, because there's a lot that they can do. They also hit pretty hard. Like if they just run out on their own, it's like 7 attacks at 722 with +1 to hit, +1 to wound. Like that hurts, man. Like that really hurts. They also have the grenade launcher, which against if they were by themselves and not within 6 inches of any friendlies, like +1 to wound on that does a surprising little like amount of chip damage. Then we have the last one, which is a shield captain on Dawn Eagle. I believe this guy is supposed to have Admon Immortus. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, shield captain on Dawn Eagle jet bike with Admon Immortus. So this guy gets he'll be strength 10 with lance, AP 3, damage 3 with his close combat weapons. Absolutely brutal. So on the charge, he has effectively +2 to hit, wound, which is obviously you can only ever get +1, but if they have a -1, that means you still negate the -1, so you'll pretty much be wounding all infantry on the game on 2s, no matter what, and against vehicles, you'll be wounding most of them on 4s. Really, really, really good here. Like, really strong piece. The salvo launches become really interesting when you get at strength 10 with +1 to wound. Means you can pop like rhinos and stuff like that pretty consistently, and even into like armager spams and stuff like that. Getting the strength 10 with +1 to wound means you're wounding them on 3, so it's 2s to hit, 3s to wound, and they get a 5-up. Like, you're doing some good damage to the bigger hulls as well. Really, really interesting. And then, annoyingly, I was kind of hoping that triple Wardens wouldn't be the best way to play this, and then I think it's decided that Wardens are just, because they're so durable and Guard are so not really surprisingly undurable for what they are, that Wardens just kind of take the cake here. The -1 to wound is really strong, and then the feel no pain when you can just turn it on when you need it. It's just super, super powerful. So yeah, 3 units of Wardens. Everyone kind of knows what these guys do now. They're still Custodes, so they still hit like an absolute truck with +1 to wound. Hit even harder than a lot. Definitely aren't as strong as the shield host variants, because crit 5s is very, very good, and extra AP can also be situationally very good. But +1 to wound means you're very good into vehicles as well, because you're wounding pretty much all vehicles in the game on 4s. Like, they hit like a truck. 1 unit of prosecutors for just a little piece to do objectives for. Hold your home field, you need something to be back there, right? 2 units of 2 bikes, the Virtus Praetors, with several launchers again. Like, one of them probably gets attached to with the captain, so that they can go off, kill something, and then move back. Really, really cool kind of ability there. But also, like, the anti-tank that they have now is significant. Like, even the Wardens, right? Like strength 4, AP 1, 2 damage. If your opponent's not getting cover, which, you know, sometimes doesn't happen, they'll be taking like 3 ups or 4 ups on the vehicles at 2 damage, and you're winning them on 5s. Like, that's pretty good. Like it's good chip damage, right? Like your melee is so powerful, but you're also making your ranged output more lethal as well. Then to finish it off, we just have a unit of Witch Seekers here. The Witch Seekers flamers do also get the +1 to wound if you're not close to friendlies, which is surprisingly good. Strength 4 +1 to wound flamers means a lot of Eldar's toughness 3. You're wounding them on 2s. Like, it's only 4 flamers, but still pretty interesting. But also just a nice little scouting unit that can do actions, hold an objective, which is the main use case, right? They're not actually there to do damage in the list. You have enough damage pieces. But just really, really cool list. Surprisingly, no Trajan, which is, I kind of thought would be a no-brainer, but I think the triple Blade Champ being able to play super aggressively when you need be, and then recycle the Blade Champ's abilities. Obviously, if you pop multiple in the same phase, you can only get one of them back. But a lot of the time, you only need like 1 or 2 of your Blade Champs to be able to advance and charge a second time. You don't need all 3 of them, so like you could probably pop 2, keep the other one back, and then refund the one that you think you're going to have to use again. It just makes your Warden Brick so much more valuable because you can have that extra speed a second time. A lot of the time, like one of your Warden Bricks will end up in like out on a corner somewhere because they had to go kill something, and not having that option to kind of like advance and charge back onto a point kind of hurt because you had to advance and charge off to kill that unit. Now being able to have access to that again is just huge. Really, really cool. Like this detachment is really fun. The fight on death strat is also great, makes those matchups really strong. I talked about the moving after shooting strat, which is also can be very, very strong. Into shooting armies, it's absolutely abysmal to play into that stratagem, because even with Wardens, you don't even have to necessarily pop the Feel No Pain. If they can only see 1 or 2 models, you just, after the shot the first time, maybe you've lost that model, and then you roll a d6, move a couple of inches, now the rest of your unit is safe. Didn't have to pop your Feel No Pain, and then you've only lost 1 model, and then you just rush off and go kill something, because 4 Custodian Wardens is almost as good as 5 Custodian Wardens. Like, it's very close. Yeah, so really, really cool list here. Really love to see, we really would have loved to see some more innovation, but I really do love to see the double Alaris Terminators on their own captains. I really think this is probably the correct way to do it. The Alaris Terminators aren't that much more damaging, but they're quite a bit more expensive than the other Terminator options. And all they gain is kind of 1 more wound, and the uppy downy is nice, but you don't necessarily need to use the uppy downy. And Unleashed to the Lions, very flavorful, very fun stratagem, but it also kind of just turns off your army rule, which is kind of tough. Like your detachment rules be away from each other, and you just made more units close together. It can be a really awkward way to kind of go around it. So if you kind of ignore that stratagem, you have a good suite of other stratagems, some really, really strong units, and +1 to wound as an army rule is just absolutely bonkers. Makes the Blade Champs sweep attacks like significantly scarier. Yeah, but really, really cool list. What you want to do to deal with this kind of list is you kind of want to, it kind of wants to split the game up. So you want to kind of clump a lot of your stuff together, because it can't just send 1 unit of Wardens in at a time, because you can kill 1 unit of Wardens. It needs to overwhelm you. So then if you're forcing them to put multiple units within 6 inches of each other to hit you, yes, it's still going to hurt, but they're not going to get their army buffs, so they're not going to be as efficient as they could be. They're not being as good, and then that's kind of how you can kind of chip away at it. If you try and play around the edges, that's kind of what they want, because they want to be able to kill you and then kind of push you back into your deployment zone. So don't let them do that. You kind of want to keep like a bit more of like a moving castle around. It's probably more what you want to do. Also load up with a bunch of 3 damage weapons. Damage 2, damage 3, AP 2, ignores cover, that kind of stuff. Those kind of profiles are really, really strong, especially if you can get +1 to wound or lance, something like that can be really, really good into an army like this. And yeah, that's kind of all I got for this one. Really, really awesome list. Like the Triple Wardens is a bit boring because it's very similar to a lot that's been out there, but it's a proven concept that works very well. So why try and iterate on something that is already very obviously strong? Next one we have here is Leagues of Votann. This one's definitely a bit of a spicier take, but I think Leagues in the meta right now, and I've talked to a bunch of my friends about this, Leagues are really good. Like, this is just the standard Oathband detachment. This was pulled from, I believe, a German tournament from a player that is well known for Leagues and is very known as a very, very strong player right now. So let's get straight into it. We have a Brokir Ironmaster with Appraising Glare enhancement. So he picks an objective. Everything of your opponents on that objective counts as one judgment token higher than they currently are. It's good. Like getting +1 to hit or up to +1 to wound on a unit. Really, really good. Also has some like decent little weapons there. He's just I think he's kind of like an action monkey that can do some stuff, hold an objective, and just kind of be a bit of a nuisance. Then we have one Ironhair Champ, no enhancements, nothing crazy here. This guy I think is just designed to run around, do some actions, be a bit of a pain, a bit of a nuisance. And yeah, just there is no Terminators in this list, so I think he's just an action piece that's really annoying to deal with. It's very similar to the Gravis Captain and the Alaris Captains from before. Just annoying, takes more commitment, especially more than 60 points. Like, they are dirt cheap for what they are. And they take more than that to kill, so it kind of forces your opponent around. They get to do an action. If they don't get dealt with, then they could go out and hit something, and they do hit pretty hard. Then we have 2 units of Hearthkin Warriors. That's 20 warriors altogether. There's 3 Sagittars in the list, so they'll probably just get split up into 4 units. So that's kind of your objective and secondary play units there, which is really nice. Like, a 50-point unit is just very nice to have. That's, you know, got OC. I think Hearthkin Warriors, like, they sticky objectives, so really nice just being able to do that all over the place. Having 4 units to do that, really good. Also have some like nice weapons when you split them off into all the good weapons in one, and then kind of the bad stuff in the rest. You have 2 bad ones to send out early, and then you have some bit more souped up units later. You have 3 Sagittars, as I said earlier, with the high layers beam cannons and twin bolt cannons. Really good gun platforms. The fact that they scout, really nice. You get some early board pressure. They hit like an absolute truck sometimes. They're called, the Harley's beams are called lottery cannons for a reason, because it's D3 shots with sustained, right? So it's like you can kill anything, or you can kill absolutely not even a scout. Like, there's kind of a bit of luck involved with them, but because you have 3, it gives you a bit more consistency. When you get the +1 to hit, +1 to wound, again, adds a bit more consistency. So played right, really, really strong. And they're really nice because they're quite a small vehicle, which I think is actually just very beneficial to have a small vehicle that's fairly durable, can get void armor, so like AOC, all that kind of stuff. Like, they're much harder to deal with than you think. And because they're quite small, they're easy to hide, which I think is just, like, a rhino's pretty easy to hide. These guys are smaller than a rhino, lower than a rhino, and hit so much better than a rhino in every single way. Yeah, so really, really like the Sagittars. This is where the list gets pretty exciting. It's 2 units of 10 Chthonian Berserkers. This is just pure damage, right? Like, this is just like, okay, I am going to hit you as hard as I can. Also really good if you're playing into a melee mirror, or like a melee matchup, because they can sit behind a wall, and if you go out and charge them, then they get to kill the thing that fought. Or even if you get to charge them, you kill a thing, and then when they charge with the next thing, because they fight on death and a 4-up, you then get to kill them, as like, you get to like trade up with them. Yes, the units aren't cheap, but as I said, like, with the Custodes being really popular at the moment, a lot of Marines taking 3 wound models. The concussion models at AP2 damage 3 are brutal. Like, these just pick up anything, like any of those high elite infantry units in the game. And with the fight on death means, like, even interrupting against them isn't necessarily great, because 5 berserks hitting you is still pretty tough, especially if you already have those what's it called, judgment tokens on them. Yep, like, they just absolutely rip. And I think, like, it's a really good, and 200 points isn't that bad for 10 guys that hit like a truck. Like, that's a pretty good rate. Like, and then we have 2 land forts. So this is where the berserks can start in, so they can't get chipped away by nonsense. They can start in something safe, get up to a good position. Land forts are incredibly durable, and like, yes, they are pretty big, but they're actually like, they're pretty tightly compact for their size, and they have an absolute truckload. They have a fortress of guns on them, like with the cyclic ion cannon, the auto cannon, the scanner for ignores cover, and the bolt cannons. Absolutely wrecks. These things absolutely wreck. I think these are supposed to have the conversion beamers, not the auto cannon, not the ion cannons. I think that's correct. Yeah, because like the conversion beamers is the one you go for, because the flat 4 damage is just chef's kiss. Sustained hits D3, and then conversion, so you get the more than 12 inches away, you get criticals on a 4-up. Just nuts. Like, those things can absolutely pop off and kill God. Again, damage 3 and 4 weapons are at an absolute premium right now, just because of how much 3 and 4 wing models, especially 3 wing models, there are at the moment. So having those, I think, just poise chef's kiss really, really well. Then we have 2 6-man Hernkin Pioneers. So these are the bikes that they can be your secondary play, but in this, it looks like they're a bit more, they're probably early game pressure and secondaries, and they kind of stage them out somewhere aggressive, do a secondary with them, and then you can teleport them if they're not in a good position, because you can lift them up and put them back on. They can kind of do their own uppy downy, or they can also just keep pressuring, and they have so much damage. Like, these guys hit like just like a freight train. I really, really love them. They're probably my favorite unit in Votann. Like, the models are absolutely stunning. The dynamic poses that they have are sick. Hover bikes are just really, really cool. And like, just the style of them is excellent, and just the amount of gun that they have is crazy. With the shotguns, the high las, the auto cannons, it's just so much damage. And the fact that you can ignore cover with them, you can give them sustained 2 a lot of the time, because they can shoot into something that has got 2 oath targets, and then 1 CP you get sustained 2, so the boatload of shots with sustained hits 2 just becomes so oppressive. It's really, really nice. So yeah, 2 units of those, and then the kill team unit, the Hernkin Jaegers. These guys have infiltrates, which means that your scout units can always get to scout somewhere, which is just super, super strong. So if your opponent has infiltrators and you win the roll-off, you can put these guys somewhere to guarantee that you're getting your scout moves. And if your opponent doesn't have infiltrators, they're still good to get some more early game pressure somewhere that you maybe couldn't have gotten to very quickly otherwise. Really, really good piece. Like, the fact that they're 90 points in an army they can have this much scout in it is kind of crazy. Like, they could be 120 points and you probably are still thinking of taking them pretty much every time. They don't do a whole lot themselves. They have a reactive move. They're very funny if you put them close to a empty land fortress, and then you can react and move back into the land fort. Like, there's some pretty fun things you can do with them. The really, really cool list. Really, again, all these, apart from the Hernkin Warriors, not much in these lists. It's all these kind of like high value, good activations that can hit really, really hard. It's kind of where the meta is at the moment. So if you can kind of think about how you can play around that as well. But absolutely great list. So how do you play against Votann? A little bit is, if you have any access to minus to hit, that apart from what is judged, and even if they are judged, Votann as a whole hit on 4s. So with +1, -1, if you have a -1 to hit and they have a +1 to hit, they're still hitting on 4s, so they're not super consistent. And if you're not judged yet, they're hitting on 5, so they're just not doing that much damage. They're hitting as accurately as orcs at that point, not Mordekaiser orcs. Also, obviously, I have assumed that Mordekaiser orcs are going to get nerfed because they're silly. I played a couple games now against it, and it's stupid. Watched a lot of games with it, and it's just, what they do is absolutely bonkers. So we're just ignoring that Mordekaiser exists right now, because I'm assuming it's not going to be a thing very soon. But yeah, so that's Oath Bands, yeah, minuses to hit. Try and pick it off a little bit at a time. Votann have a lot of damage, and you have to respect it. But if you start killing resources, their order becomes a lot worse. So if you can just deal with part of the army at once, like say you can kill a unit of bikes without sacrificing too much, or move block all the vehicles and then kill a couple of resources. Stuff like that can be really, really good into Votann. You don't want to try and all-in Votann because their raw just damage output is insane. So you need to be able to respect that. So it's kind of playing a balancing game where you want to, it's kind of opposite of the Custodes match where you kind of want to go a bit more broad and you want to pick things off around the edges, and then on turn 3 or 4, once the Votann has been depleted a little bit, then go in. That's kind of what you have to do as a strategy into them. But really, really strong list. I really think people should be thinking about Votann a lot more. They are just absolutely stunning. One of my very good friends, Josh, though he likes the Hearthguard Terminators, which I disagree with, I don't think they're very good, he does absolutely wonderful things with Votann, and he's definitely one of my resources when I go to talk about Votann. I just have to disagree with him on the one thing that the Votann Terminators are not very good. Sorry, Josh. But everything else in the list, and Votann in general, I think are in a very, very strong spot. And on to the last list. I'm just going to take a drink. Shadow Legion. Now this one is a bit because I'm a bit Shadow Legion pilled right now. I've been having so much fun playing with these guys. Building lists with them has been absolutely a pleasure. Doing just full demon lists, doing the 50-50 CSM demon lists, trying to figure out where the interesting points of Chaos Space Marines are. Is there good damage points? Is it more just the utility you get? All sorts of like really fun things and different combos you can do. But this is a list that won a tournament last weekend. Went undefeated at least. And this one is very all-in, and I kind of love the style of it. So it starts off with Be'lakor as the Warlord, as he has to be. If you have Be'lakor, you don't have to take Be'lakor, but he is very, very strong in this detachment. I didn't realize how strong Be'lakor was until I played with him a couple of times. And the Dark Packs on his shooting and in melee is just, it's so good. Like, it really unlocks him as a damage dealer, and he's still just a really great utility piece as well. Then we have 2 Bloodthirsters, one with Leaping Shadows, so that's the 9-inch Scout enhancement, and then the other one with Fated Darkness. So this is the one, if he kills a unit in the fight phase, and then he's nothing with an engagement range at the end of the fight phase, he can go back into reserves. Very, very strong combo here. You can go very aggressive with this as well. And if they put a screen out to stop your Leaping Shadows one from scouting, then the Fated Darkness one is probably within range to go out and just kill it and then go back into the Sky Turn one. So some very, very fun plays you can do when you have both of these. You can kind of use one to bait the other one. Especially if you can fade turn 1 is very, very good to start that kind of rapid ingress cycling from the get-go. Really, really strong ability there. One thing I will say is Bloodthirsters are very killy, but they are a little swingy. Yes, a lot of the time you're hitting on 2s, winning on 2s or 3s, but if you just roll a couple of extra 1s, they can just knock killer units. So make sure you're using the stratagem for Lance and +1 AP on a Bloodthirster a lot of the time, just to guarantee those kind of kills a bit more. And just remember that they're also just a durable piece. You don't have to put them back into reserve with the Fated Darkness. If you've gone in with both of them, often an opponent can kill 1, but they can't kill 2. So if you just shove both of them into the face on like turn 3 or 4, don't think about lifting the other one up. Just charge them in, tag more things after you've killed them, and just kind of oversaturate your opponent with threats. I've seen a couple of games now where they're just always faded at the end of the threads. It's like, why did you not just leave it on the objective or something? It's like your opponent isn't got enough on that side to kind of deal with that. So it's kind of one of those things that you kind of got to get used to playing with it. But very, very cool combo here. A lot of points though. 1,000 points in 3 models. Very good models, don't get me wrong. But it is a lot of points in 3 models. Then we have the battle line, which is just 2 units. 2 units of Plague Bearers, no Nurglings, which is just questionable when you have a enhancement for 9-inch Scout and then no Infiltrators in your list. Very interesting, but double sticky here, like 2 sticky units, really good. Plague Bearers are just very strong, especially in this attachment with the, if your strength is higher than the toughness, -1 to wound, very good. They're just surprisingly just good units. A Beast of Nurgle, just lovely. They're regenerating at the end of every phase, excellent. They take so much more commitment than 65 points. They often take like 200 points of commitment to kill, and then you just can trade up every single time. Like I've been getting trying to fit 2 into a lot of my lists, just because you put 1 in each expansion objective, or even 1 in the middle, and your opponent has to put just a surprising amount onto the objective to deal with it. And it's been very fun to play around with. And as soon as they just don't kill it, then it goes back up to hit full. You get to kill the unit that came out, and they've done effectively 0 damage. It's just so great. Next we have 2 units of flamers. These are probably a bit more action monkeys that can also just do a little bit of damage. Strength 4 AP1 flamers are just really nice. Really good against like the Eldar matchup and stuff like that. Just being able to chip away at those 5-man aspect warrior units. Pretty consistently kills 4 to 5 aspects with the AP1. Then we have 2 units of flesh hounds. Flesh hounds with the puppy Downy is really, really strong. They also really like the Lance +1 AP strat, going to strength 5 AP 2 damage 1 with the Lance, with +1 to wound effectively. Kills a lot. Like, they kill chaff units really, really well. They're great at doing secondaries. They're fast. Advance and charge with a 12-inch move is just really, really quick. They're all-rounders. For 75 points, these guys are absolute, like, outlandishly good for what they do. And then this list finishes out with 1 cultist mob and 2 Nurgle soul grinders. And I definitely thought Nurgle was a very interesting choice here. The Flamme Bombardment being indirect is kind of interesting. So you get, D6 +1 shots, hitting on 3, strength 7, AP1, damage 2, with indirect fire and lethal hits. So pretty interesting. Like, damage 2 is a nice place to be. Being able to chip some models down from afar, and then when you get in, you get that you have the D6 +1 of this, and then you also have the Harvester Cannon for some extra damage there. So you get an extra 3 shots at 10, 1, 3. 3 damage here being very nice. 3 shots is kind of but the ability, so that las cannons and stuff like that will be wounding them on 4s, is really quite interesting. Like, it gives them that extra little bit of durability against those really good anti-tank guns. I've been told to try, actually I haven't tried them myself, but I've been told from a friend to try Zench Soul Grinders, because the +1 to hit is really nice. Having the pseudo D3 las cannons on a couple of Soul Grinders can be really nice. Being able to uppy downy them, teleport them to different angles, means that their slow movement and kind of big chassis isn't as much of an issue. And yes, and that's kind of the kind of thought process there is. But obviously, I need to be looking at these Nurgle ones. The indirect is kind of cute, like being able to kill like the easy little chaff of your opponent's objectives. They really love the rarer ones from Be'lakor if you can go into that aura. So it's a pretty interesting takes there. And the 1 extra unit of cultists stickers your home field and then teleports away and does other stuff. Great. I've been absolutely loving cultists in my Shadow Legion lists. Absolute great utility pieces. But this list is just a lot of chunk. Like, it's so much in this list. Like, so many big beefy boys in this list. It's effectively 2 Bloodthirsters, Be'lakor, and then 2 Soul Grinders, and then the rest is just kind of mission play. Like, realistically, like, it's the rest of the list is just mission play. So you're kind of just bullying and stat checking a little bit, but your stat checks hit like a truck. So there's a lot of stat checks where it's like, oh, these things do like a little bit of damage, whereas like every single one, like Bloodthirsters hit like a truck. Be'lakor, great shooting, like surprisingly good shooting with the 12 shots, and then pretty good melee as well. AP3 melee with his sweep is just grand. Like, it does a lot. And then the 2 Soul Grinders to do what they need to do. Really, really good stuff there. Like, it does. It pressures your opponent in such a way that it forces them into kind of making mistakes, because you've got a good lock on primary with the Plague Bearers, the Beasts. You have a good lock on secondaries with the Flamers and Flesh Hounds. And then you just have this absolute bully of, if they want to play a slow game, you have a Fade to Darkness Bloodthirster that's just killing a unit every turn without anything in response. And then if they try and all in you have just this absolute bucket load of damage with Be'lakor, double Soul Grinders, and a Bloodthirster. And then also the other Bloodthirster as well, right? So you can really pressure back. So they can't really pressure you out. And then if you can identify that the matchup is that they don't have a good way of dealing with your big guys, you can just push them out early and be like, okay, try and deal with them. Even if they kill one of your Bloodthirsters or both your Soul Grinders, these 3 guys together, if they just go in untouched, will start ripping apart your opponent's army. Like absolutely shredding it. And then you're still holding your primary really well. You still got the good secondary play, the good mission play. Really, really cool stuff. Really, really cool stuff. And yeah, and that's kind of it for this video, guys. Hope you enjoyed. I'm going to put the list hopefully in the description, so you have the full copy paste of all these lists down there, so you can go and check those out yourself and copy them if you want, and get ideas for your own lists. Let me know what factions and what armies you think are doing really well at the moment. If there's any lists that you want me to cover, anything you want, any factions specifically that you want me to talk about, put that down in the description below. I'll look through them. I read through every single comment. I really love it when there are comments down there to read. It keeps me busy during my work day. And otherwise, I'll see you guys next time. Catch ya.